And I have with me in the studio to talk about this, attorney, gender specialist, and founder, Tribex Lab, Emalohi Irobe. It's nice to have you join me now.
It's nice to be back on here.
Yeah, it's nice to be back, right?
Yes, it's nice to be back.
Good. Now let's dive into this. I'd like us to, maximize the time that we have. When we talk about the issue of harassment, or some people might call it cyberbullying,
yes,
or cyber stalking, depending on, I wonder what constitutes all of that harassment on social media.
Okay, so harassment on social media is when a person is doxxed, meaning that their personal information is released to the public, so other people can insult, harass, threaten them. It also includes malicious comments, false information, impersonation, and all of this falls under the umbrella of digital harassment, and it happens mostly to women or to people making an opinion that a lot of people don't agree with. So the social media bill that is progressing through the House seeks to criminalize or punish false or malicious information, threats to public safety, threats to national security, as well as any kind of information that will make you hate a person or a group of people. And so we think that the social media bill, instead of stifling free speech, should actually try to punish, prevent, and criminalize digital harassment.
Yeah. All right. Now, I'm just trying to visualize, because if you go on any of the social media platforms, like Twitter, for instance, sometimes it can be on fire.
Twitter is a
Oh
battleground.
my God! Now the point there is, for one who is being harassed, I wonder, are there steps to take? What can the person do?
Okay, so there are lots of groups and movements working to make online safety a priority to tech companies and to the governments. Currently, well, in the context of Nigeria, there isn't much you can do. You can report, but the other issue is that there are lots of people that are impersonating or catfishing. So catfishing is when you pretend to be somebody else, and it happens a lot with romance scams and dating. So there isn't much you can do. You can report it, you can document it, but there aren't enough laws around in Nigeria to actually trace who's behind this, because sometimes people think online harassment is harmless because it's in the digital space. But it often spills out into people's private lives and professional lives. People have lost their jobs due to what is called revenge porn, when they release photos and videos of women or men in compromising situations. Or so there isn't much to do in Nigeria. And of course, access to justice also here in Nigeria is a bit difficult. So we think that instead of a social media bill that stifles free speech, because there isn't an explanation of how social media will be regulated, we think that they should provide steps on how to identify and curb harassment and get the people behind it.
What could really be the motives behind harassing people on a public space like that?
To silence them. So, I mean, I would talk from the context of the gender space and women. Women online, especially on Twitter, especially Nigerian women that have feminist ideas and feminist views, they get harassed because they need to be silenced. Society doesn't like what they're saying, and they also want to rule by fear. So if someone is afraid of their safety, afraid of being embarrassed, afraid of being blackmailed, they would just be like, okay, I'm not saying anything anymore. It's a thing to silence people. It's an abuse of power. Or a power dynamic that you didn't even know existed. Well, someone now has all this information about you, and they can make it be anything.
Now, when the government is talking about issues of hate speech, fake news, misinformation, disinformation, all of those terminologies there, and they are considering a social media bill in that regard, do you think that can really curb it? Because this is not only about Nigeria. Social media is like a world, another world out there somewhere.
The issue about fake news is really serious, and is something that government should try to tackle. But the answer is not in stifling free speech. I think the answer is in providing access to more credible and reliable sources of information so people can research and know, well, this doesn't make any sense or this is untrue. And I think massive education of what deepfakes are. So deepfakes are this new thing, you know, in technology where you can put somebody else's face on somebody else's body and present them as what they're not. Those are the areas in which the government can collaborate with the tech companies to make access to proper information, accurate information, available to the masses, because people believe anything. In Nigeria, it's a big problem. WhatsApp, mass messages where they send all kinds of things, especially with COVID-19 now. We've seen a million cures.
Oh yeah, I can tell you that.
So it's important for fake news to be tackled in meaningful ways, but a blanket ban on social media without steps on how you're actually going to do it, because you can ban me on social media in Nigeria, but I can travel somewhere else and beyond. So that is not going to be possible. And there's a lot of opposition anyway to the social media bill.
All right, now, how do we, there's the issue of pushing for the freedom of speech.
Yes.
You have, in fact, it's constitutional.
Yes.
You have a right to say anything you want to say and all of that. Then it gets to a limit where, so long as, you know, it doesn't infringe on someone else's. But how do we balance this?
So you don't...
Where you have the freedom to express yourself, yet it is infringing on someone else. How do we balance that?
I mean, so the how you would qualify what infringes on someone else's rights is if what you have said incites violence or is a threat to public safety. So if you make a comment that would make a group of people mob somebody else or mob a country or boycott a business or whatever it is a weapon that is used to silence people. And so it is really, really important and necessary to understand the reasoning behind why people do these things online and educate to prevent it in the first place. Because also the internet never forgets. So whatever you put out there
it's
is
always
already there. Even if, you know, they make you take it down, even if you put an apology, it is always in the space.
So talk to us basically at Tribex Lab. How do you guys, you know, approach these things and as a way of trying to either bring an end to it or help people who are victims of harassment or bullying, or how are you guys doing this?
So the main core of our work at Tribex Lab is to increase everyone's understanding and knowledge base of, you know, how women are oppressed. And I think when you have knowledge, then you can tackle things. And in our work, we notice that a lot of people don't know that, well, this that I did is harassment, or this that I did is contributing to the systemic oppression of women in whatever field and in whatever. So what we do at Tribex Lab is have critical conversations, increase the capacity of people to understand laws and protections, provide information, access to resources, psychosocial support, entrepreneurship support, and just teach people, organizations, corporations, law enforcement, this is how you can make Nigeria better for women. This is how you can make it safer for women in public spaces, in the digital space, even in private spaces. So our work is really bringing light on all these issues that affect women, and really, even though we say it affects women, it affects the whole country, because it's all of us against this system that keeps half the population behind.
So about how many people have benefited from this enlightenment who have originally would have been somewhere in the dark, not knowing how to approach this thing, not even knowing what the thing is about, but now from what you've done, they now have a better idea how to approach things?
Well, so what we do is we have different campaigns. Okay. So April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and on our social media pages and on our website, we're giving information on the kinds of sexual harassments and what it can look like. And to connect with people, we're using memes from Nollywood movies. Okay. You know, our popular culture is actually a representation of our real life. And so every month we have a different campaign which people follow on, people comment, people give their opinion, people say, well, what you're saying doesn't make sense, or people say, oh, it makes sense. And then also the great thing about having these conversations is that you get to learn from different types of people from different walks of life, and learning can never stop. You know, the more you learn, the more you can create solutions to issues and even find out problems, you know, that exist.
What can be the likely consequences from harassment of this kind, or even bullying of that kind? What can you give us a spectrum of them?
Well, I think the social media bill that is being proposed has a fine and a 3-year jail term, but I don't think that would work in the long run. I think criminalizing certain acts, so if you have done something in the digital space and it has led to harm in the physical space, for example, doxing, you release people's personal information, their family phone numbers, addresses, and then people go to their house and burn down their house. Those are the real consequences. But for things that you can't trace to a harm that's happened, I think it would be hard to punish it. But criminalizing those acts, criminalizing the act, the same way if you were harassing someone, physically following them, stalking them, that you can report to the police and file a complaint. Those are the same ways there should be due process for victims of online harassment.
But anybody who is a victim of harassment or bullying, can you share with us from your experience and your engagement with some of these people, what harm does it cause to them?
Well, first of all, it is fear, right? It's a psychosocial type of fear where you're worried about your safety, because these threats are online, but it's possible for it to come, in real life. So the first thing is like victims of this are afraid, and then because they're afraid, they either keep quiet or they stop doing what they're doing. And so sometimes it leads to anxiety, it leads to post-traumatic stress disorder. You talk to people who are like, oh my God, I left Twitter, it was messing with my mental health. Or people who say, I'm no longer going to be on Instagram because it's just too much. I mean, people bully celebrities, people bully lay people bully people for their opinions, they comment
They
on
even
things.
bully brands.
Yes, they bully brands, and it's a mob mentality. What would happen is somebody that has a lot of followers or people who look up to them can target someone and say, oh, this person has done something, or it might even be a false accusation, and the next thing, there's no due process. The person doesn't even have a chance to express or explain their side of story, and there's a mob of insults, abuse, threats. They love to give rape threats to women all the time. The first thing they will say, I will just rape you. That leads to fear in your real life, because women are in general not very safe. Security is an issue. So someone has said all these things to you, you're a known face maybe, or the person has said, I know you, I know your house. You're now living in fear, worried about your safety and that of your family and your loved ones. You're worried about your employer getting information that is untrue about you. So these matters are real and they're serious, but a social media bill that just bans speech is not going to work.
Anyone who is being harassed or bullied in that regard, would you advise the person to respond back to whoever? Because I'm just trying to create a scenario where someone tags you on maybe on Twitter, for instance, and then said some kind of things, and then you see a thread of comments and all of that. Should the person who is being harassed respond, or what's the best way to approach that?
I think it would come down to a personal choice, but you can't reason with people that are not trying to be reasonable, and I think that would be exposing yourself to more abuse. But again, there are other people who feel like, well, I want to stand up and speak back up. So it depends on your own emotional strength. I personally would not be able
I've seen some people give fire for fire. They toss it to you and you toss it back and all of that. And then the whole place is charged up.
Yeah.
And so
that's if it's just a one-time thing. There are women that get abusive emails, harassing comments, threats every day in the hundreds. And so after a while, how many can you respond to? But what we usually would advise victims of online harassment is to document, take screenshots, try to find the thread, if it's on Twitter, get this information and document it, because it could come in handy later. If anything happened to you, hopefully not, there is a trail. I don't know if in Nigeria there is a way to report this to the police. I don't really believe that the police would consider cyberbullying or harassment in digital space as seriously. They barely care about real, physical issues. It's hard to access justice for things that you can say, oh, this person stole my phone or this person did that. But for something like these people are threatening me online and they've said all this and all that. I don't know if
that is not taking roots as it's supposed to be yet.
No.
Now, you've mentioned the women being victims of harassment several times. Why women, though? Okay, can you take us to that world?
Okay, so first of all, men also get harassed too, but overwhelmingly, women are the biggest victims of online harassment.
Why is that?
Well, I'm not an online bully, so I don't know.
I don't know. The point is, no, I'm trying to understand, because the point is, you've engaged with a lot of people one way or the other, and you must have heard from people who say, either from certain victims who incidentally are more females than males, or someone who must have carried out maybe a survey of all of these things and discovered that more women are harassed, due to this or due to that. So
it's because of what we call rape culture, which is a culture or a society that blames victims for anything that happens to them, and is usually in relation to women who are being harassed. So also, if a woman is harassed online, they would say, well, why did you have this opinion? Why did you say this? So it's a way women are harassed because they want you to be silenced. They want you to keep quiet. It's like, a woman can be harassed for saying, if you're in an abusive marriage, you should try to leave. Or you're trying to break homes, you're this, you're that. But that's really not what the person was trying to say. So it's a way of silencing women, because we live in a culture that feels that women are second, and you shouldn't be having that much of an opinion anyway. And social media and the internet has given everyone a stage. Anybody can become a star overnight. Anyone can be catapulted into the global space and exposed. But women overwhelmingly, even down to Meghan Markle. I mean, all these people get harassed, no matter what level you are. Hillary Clinton, even the new president of Tanzania, they're already, so it's a world in which they would rather women be a little more quiet, stop complaining.
Well, the point there is, we're getting into the world where anyone who has something to say it.
Yes.
Where no one is holding anyone down because
it's not in a way to cause issues.
No, certainly not. The point there is, we're talking of positivity. If you have something to share, you have something to say, so long as it doesn't infringe on anyone, you should have the powers to say.
It's not going to infringe on someone? Because that's the other thing. We're living in a period of time of political correctness, and so it is also more difficult to have debates about things that are sensitive issues. So that is why a social media bill will be a problem, because for me, I might have an opinion or an idea on something that I don't think is offensive, and a million people out there are like off with their head. So how would you actually say, I can say whatever I want as long as I'm not infringing on somebody else? But how do you know?
All right, maybe, but I think on moral grounds, though, on moral grounds, one should be able to, decipher if what you have to say is said in a good motive.
Give me an example.
Yeah, no, of course. People have the right to opinions, right? If I have an opinion about a certain thing, whatever it is, the way I say it, the use and choice of words that I use could make it, become an issue of my opinion than the issue of attacking someone. Because
have you ever been cyberbullied? Come on, you have to have been. Someone has to have insulted you at some point.
I've had that a lot of times. It's normal. If you're a public person out there, you
so for example, one of the things that you may have been, harassed about, didn't you think it was your opinion and it wasn't infringing on
No, of course, right? That's the thing. So the point there is, but it doesn't prevent you from having and holding your opinion. It's your opinion. And like you said, it mustn't go down well with everyone.
Yeah, it can't.
But the point there is, the way you said it, of course, so long as it's not insulting anyone or it's not infringing on anyone, you have said whatever you say, isn't it? But let's get into the issue of finding solutions to all of this now. What do you think? How do you think we can reduce all of this kind of incidences?
Education, really, mass education of everyone about the role women play in society. We need to move away from this, they're the weaker sex, they are not really contributing, or, men are taking care of women. We need to change the perception and views of women in society. That's one of the first things. Because then if you think someone is of value and what they say, you wouldn't feel like if someone is rising, then they are a threat to you or your masculinity or your position in society. The second solution I would propose is legislation around what actually is a crime or a form of harassment. So for example, releasing intimate photos of someone without their consent or permission online should automatically be criminalized. Because so then that is already a deterrent. If you know that for real, if I do this, it can be traced and I would face consequences. I think legislation around specific things, so there's no gray area, because the current social media bill as it is now, it's a gray area, and it could also be a dangerous slippery slope. But legislation that is specific, like if you do ABC, you're going away for this long, or this is a crime, or this is a fine, I think will go a long way in preventing and then also ending harassment in the digital space.
All right, Malahi Robe, it's always interesting discussing with you on the show on these issues. Thank you very much for talking to us and coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for what you do at Tribe
XX Lab.
Yeah, I like to call it Tribe X, but Tribe XX Lab. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.